How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Paranormal Activity 2. That's this one right here with a little hunter in his crib. This is from 2010. This is directed by Tod Williams, who, yes, is a different director than the first one. The first movie's director, Oren Peli, would be a producer on this film, and a lot of his career going forward would actually be in producer roles instead of directing roles. Also on producing, we have Jason Blum, because of course this is a Blumhouse movie. I probably should have mentioned in my last review, but the Paranormal Activity movies were an important step in turning early Blumhouse in the horror direction that it would get known for later on. This movie stars Molly Ephraim, Brian Boland, Sprague Grayden, and of course, returning from the first movie, we get appearances of Featherson and Micah Sloat. Good to see them back. Now, I talked about, in my review for the first one, I feel a lot of modern critics were unnecessarily harsh on Paranormal Activity because of the big boom that happened after it. And I feel like people are also unnecessarily harsh on Paranormal Activity 2. Oh, it's the first in a long line of sequels, blah, blah, whatever, Paranormal Activity sequel. But no, I think Paranormal Activity 2 is actually pretty good. I think that if it wasn't, we wouldn't have had all the other sequels. There's a whole line of horror duologies where you get one good movie, a lame sequel, and that's all they wrote. But they kind of knew, because of the wave of people in Paranormal Activity 1, it was such a huge thing. They knew this was going to be a big, crowded movie, and they knew they had to turn out a crowd pleaser. And boy, did they. I saw this movie in theaters way back in the day, and that was the best way to experience it. A big, packed theater, and everybody screaming at all the jump scares. If only I could go back to 2010, see this in the theaters again. More on that in a second, though. I feel that Paranormal Activity 2 does a good job of connecting to the first one, and when it's revealed how Paranormal Activity 2 connects to 1, I think it is a really interesting revelation that really does recontextualize Paranormal Activity 1, but it also does a good enough job of doing its own thing, having its own feel, being a little bit different, and also upping the scares a little bit without going too big or too over the top or too cheesy. I feel like there's a lot of steps in the right direction. And the biggest thing here is how they reinvent the static wide shot that was used in the first movie. And I guess I should elaborate on that. In the first movie, there's a classic, iconic shot of the bed where we're watching the two people sleep and we're wondering what's going to happen to them. We're looking at them in a wide shot and we're trying to figure out what's going to happen while we look down at a distance away from the characters in kind of a helpless state. It was a really good idea, but rewatching the first Paranormal Activity, I was actually surprised at how often the camera moved around and that it wasn't primarily told in all wides. And I think the wide shot is a Paranormal Activity trope that was in the first one, but didn't really get expanded upon until Part 2. Part 2 uses a lot of security cameras, and not only do we get good wide shots, we get good wide shots in several different rooms, and that gives us the rotating feature. Checking in on one room, maybe there's nothing there. You never know when we rotate through all these rooms which one's going to be dangerous and which one's going to have something scary in it. It also lets you tell the story in a very naturalistic way because you wouldn't necessarily carry a camera around with you all the time, but the security camera is always watching, and I can't help but feel that Paranormal Activity 2, it really did set the trope of rotating through static wides. The series would be known for this, found footage would be known for this, Five Nights at Freddy's would be known for this. It really did reinvigorate the concept. Now that being said, I do want to say this is a pretty bang-heavy movie, and I know it gets a ton of criticism for that. Basically, a lot of the times when there would be something, you'd be watching a character going about their business, and all of a sudden, loud bang. And it does get a little old, especially if you're watching this at home. But you know how I said the theater experience for Paranormal Activity 2 was stellar? Oh my gosh, this banging motif plays so different in a theater that's really into it. The whole theater being tense, the whole theater being quiet, the whole theater going through these wide shots wondering when something's gonna happen, and then a bang, a noise, admittedly a cheesy jump scare. But back in 2010, feeling the wave of everyone in the theater screaming at once, like you could literally feel the air of just several people screaming. Boy, did this play to a crowd perfectly back in the day. Watching it at home, if you're not fully into it, it is cheesy, it is jump scare heavy, but you know what? You gotta factor in time and location into this, and back in the day, that was just so fun. So overall, yeah, I know Paranormal Activity 2 is not a masterpiece or anything, but it really did change a lot for the found footage world. It really did say that the success could be replicated, and the scrolling wide shot motif is used so often now. So yeah, it's not perfect, but I think it's a really solid horror movie that deserves more credit than it probably gets, and I can easily recommend it. Anyway, in order to analyze this further, let's talk a bit about the plot. I'll be avoiding major spoilers, but I do want to dig in and analyze from here on out. Anyway, we open up with them bringing home a new baby. This is little baby Hunter, and everybody's excited and filming the baby, and that's where we see Katie again. Katie, the girl from the first movie, spoilers for the first movie, notably not possessed here, so we know that we're taking place before Paranormal Activity 1. This is actually a prequel, and we're going to be taking a look at Katie's sister's family. So a bit of oncoming dread knowing that we're approaching Paranormal Activity 1, but also a bit of how did we get here? How does this connect? And again, a very interesting way it does later on in the movie. But anyway, we get this idea that Katie and Micah, you know, it is Katie's sister, so in turn they are people that hang out around this house quite a bit. They're not always there, and they do a good job of establishing them, fitting them in this world without them overstaying their welcome, which is really nice. And I also like when they're filming the baby, Micah looks at the camera and he's like, wow, that's a cool camera. What is it, HD? And I really do like, this is before he bought his camera, and it's a silly, subtle thing, but the idea that the events of Paranormal Activity 2 kind of sparked his interest in cameras and inspired him to get one of his own later on. Tiny detail, but I absolutely love it. Anyway, eventually this house will get a break-in, and when the house gets broken into, they, you know, are a little shaken up, obviously. And if you like the broken into house concept, definitely check out The Hangman. Or, no, the Just Hangman. It's another found footage movie that does kind of this concept. But anyway, the house is broken into. They're all scared. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be the spirit or just regular ransackers. It leaves the baby's room alone, so I'm guessing that this is the spirit. But because of this, they decide to get security cameras. And again, like I said, security cameras are a really great idea. You know, you had filming the baby. The baby is precious and something you would want to document. So that's why you would have this handheld camera just floating around and why you would be recording all the time. But naturally, you wouldn't be recording all the time. So having these security cameras are a great way to capture all the little moments. And having it be that we're just nervous about a break-in, that is a good reason to have these set up before you really know that there is paranormal activity. So, a good excuse to get these cameras set up. And then we get the family dynamic. There's Katie's sister, who, a little bit like her, is a little anxious when the paranormal activity starts to kind of seep in, and I do like when she does have some conversations with Katie about this. We then get her husband, who, unlike Micah, because Micah was kind of a goofball, this husband is very much the serious, tough dad, and he'll be a little gruff. He'll be like, this house isn't haunted, quit being crazy, and I do like he's a very different character. He's very gruff, yet at the same time he is a dad, so like when one of the banging jump scares turns out to be a bird hitting the window, he'll pick it up with tongs but kind of tease his daughter and wife like, ooh, I got a dead bird. Very realistic dad character. We also get the dad had a daughter from a previous relationship, so she doesn't know about Katie and all this ghost stuff. She's also a lot older than little baby Hunter, and I think the deal with her, like, she thinks when the possibility of a ghost shows up, she thinks that it's kind of like a fun thing, kind of like Micah did. But when we find out the real reason she's interested in it, it's a good reason, and I wish we had explored her character more. You see, the movie really is about the mom and dad primarily, and then we get her, and she does turn out to have an interesting plot, but she just definitely does feel like a B-side character, but she's the one that's going to be holding the moving camera, so we actually do spend a lot of time with her, and I wish she got just a scene or two earlier on that established her as a more well-defined character, because when we find out why she's looking for Ghost, it's actually kind of interesting. So she had potential that just didn't get 100% panned out, and I wish this character was a little more developed. But anyway, also in the family, we have little baby Hunter, who of course we don't want anything to happen to. And we have a good German Shepherd. And I really do like, the German Shepherd is a really good actor. To see him, whenever they put the baby in the crib, the first thing he does is go to the baby's crib, sit down, and watch the door. It's him being a very good dog. I really do like this dog. Loyal and ready to do what he needs to do, but also when the family's not on edge, but that dog knows something up, that's a cue to the audience, you know? So, good characters, and of course, little things will start to happen. And at first it's nothing. Oh, a pot fell down, or something else small happened. I think it might be a ghost, but my dad says it's crazy, and it does build up. And one thing I do like is they do think to check the camera a few times. There's this whole thing with like a pool cleaning robot that keeps getting out of the pool, and it turns out to be innocuous, and they actually think to check the cameras and look. But also bear in mind, if they don't notice it happened, they're not going to review the entire day's worth of footage, so a lot of things are lost on them, but it's logical that that would be lost. It makes sense. But it does build up. It gets to the point where everyone starts to know and tensions rise, and I won't spoil too much of the end, but I will say there's a little bit at the end of this film with night vision, and that sequence, especially back in the day in the theaters, was a really intense sequence. There's one shot where the camera's dropped, and we see little baby Hunter walk into frame, and he's upside down because the camera fell over upside down, and he's looking right at the night vision so his eyes are glowing. I always felt that to be a really good creepy shot, and that ending sequence where it happens in was always such a great sequence. So overall, it does wrap up really good, and yeah, it is a bit jump scare heavy. It does, stay pretty low key for quite some time, and if you're not into the Paranormal Activity, just kind of chill and vibe until things get crazy, yeah, you wouldn't be into that. But overall, I thought Paranormal Activity 2 was definitely a step in the right direction, as far as how we build things out and how we go about this, and looking at Paranormal Activity 1 kind of from a side view and filling in the gaps from this different angle, it's really cool. I remember really liking the first 3 Paranormal Activities. I think the third one might even be my favorite. I'm really excited to do that rewatch. 4 through 6, they're passable, but I haven't seen them in a very long time, so I'm curious what happens. And I haven't seen the streaming movie yet, so I'm gonna go through all these. Here's hoping most of them hold up. But Paranormal Activity 2, I definitely really liked, but again, the theater experience was so much better, and you have to bear in mind that that's really what the movie was made for. But anyway, to everybody who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everybody who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my found footage movies playlist where you can see me review the first Paranormal Activity, as well as Rec, VHS, Houses October Built. There should be a ton of stuff in that playlist. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.